everyone, welcome to Effective Business Writing. This workshop is developed to help you become more effective business writers as a student, current or future employers. This presentation is created by the Writing, Reading, Speech Assistants located in the Learning Commons at College of DuPage. So before we start, there are a few things we should ask ourselves to get a better understanding of business writing. First of all, why do we do it? Why is business writing so important? Well, in my opinion, in any professional or academic setting, you are always being evaluated on whether you can communicate effectively. Effective communication skills in writing show a few things to your employers or to your instructors. First, it shows that you are articulate, able to express your thoughts clearly, that you are organized, able to develop a thought-out argument, and competent, able to demonstrate logic and reason. Second, we should consider, when do we use it? A lot of people may give specific examples to when professional business writing is used, but I think business writing is used every day. In fact, the steps we take to write a business draft or business writing draft is the same when we are writing an email to an instructor, a write-up or report at work, a personal statement to transfer to a four-year university, or a follow-up to a job employer after an interview. So as you can see, business writing is used in many different ways that we didn't realize, and a lot of us probably realize that we're conducting business writing even now as students at College of DuPage or at any point in your employment at a job. So for the purposes of this workshop, we will focus on three main business writing forms. First, emails. An email can be either a follow-up to a report, a request to a superior, or serve a completely different purpose. As you know, there are many of emails and types of emails out there. Second, letters, which can come in a form of a cover letter, external letters to a client or prospective client, or a business-wide address. Finally, a report can be many things. A few examples are serving as a detailed summary of report or analysis, or something as simple as a basic meeting overview where you are responsible for taking notes for that meeting. When writing in a professional setting, you should always consider three components, two of which should be considered before you start to write. First one is audience, knowing who you are writing to, purpose, what and why you are communicating, and clarity. Are you being clear and concise? These three considerations are important to think about as you start to draft your writing. It'll help you to stay more organized and focused. Not to mention, you should always be checking throughout your writing to ensure that you are addressing these components, especially audience and purpose. Clarity is also something you can develop or take a look at after you have completed the writing, which I will show you later on in this workshop. So first, we will discuss audience. Audience seems very general. There's a lot of things people might think you need to consider for audience, but it's easy to determine your audience when you break it down simply. First, consider, is your audience member an internal or external member of your company? In other words, is your audience within your company, school, organization, corporation, or is it an outside member? If it is internal, or as in someone who works within your company or organization, you should break down your audience member a little further. Are they a subordinate, someone who reports to you, a coworker who has a similar or equal position to you, or a superior, someone you report to? Once you've determined that, you should also think about, is the audience member or members a team or group you are writing to, or is it a specific individual? Even if the specific business writing is intended for an individual, remember that writing has the potential to be circulated, forwarded, or shared within the company. So ensure that not only is the writing appropriate, but you are okay with it being seen from many different people within your company. If your audience member is external, you should consider a few things. Consider, are they a vendor or consultant, as in someone who works for you? Or are they a prospective or an existing client? Determining your audience for this will help determine how to approach your writing. For example, how you write to a prospective client may be quite different than how you write to an existing client. For a prospective client, it may provide a lot more information about your company to give them a little bit of an introduction about what your company does and who you are, and it might be a little bit more formal. If you are working with an existing client where you've established a close professional relationship, it might be a little bit more casual. You might end an email with thanks rather than thank you, or see you at our next meeting compared to I look forward to speaking with you. These are some distinctions that might occur when you start to think about how to address a prospective versus an existing client. When addressing your audience member, you must always contemplate, why does my audience care about what I'm writing? What do they need to know? Always think WIFM, which stands for what's in it for me. The catch here is the me is not you, the person who is writing. Always try to think about your writing from the perspective of the person who will be reading it. What is in it for your audience member? You never want to have an audience member read your writing and think at the end of it, so what? You never want them to think, what do I need to do with this? Or why was this written to me? Everything needs to be clear and concise, and that starts with considering what your audience member needs to know and why it's being directed to them. Let's practice this. First, let's think about how would you write to a superior versus a colleague versus a subordinate? What vocabulary and verbs would you include for this specific audience? An example that some may encounter when writing to a superior, if yours is like mine, they may respect enthusiasm and not like the word problem. So instead of problem, we can use words such as the opportunity for improvement. It can be a challenge for success. Problem has such a negative connotation that oftentimes our bosses don't want to hear that. Another example is if you are working in community outreach and you are talking to a superior or even someone within the realm similar to you, you may want to use keywords such as inspire, collaborate, unite. These are words that superiors or even colleagues might appreciate as trying to motivate or instill change within a community. Going back to this scenario of how you would write to your superior versus colleague versus subordinate, we might simplify that a little bit and think about if you are writing to a colleague, you might say, here are our next steps. Compared to writing to someone who reports to you, you might say, what are your next steps? And then when you're talking to your superior, you might state, here are my next steps. Do you notice that distinction? It's all about the perspective of who you're writing to. Next, we will discuss purpose. Before you start writing, you must always consider why you are writing. This may seem so simple that it falls at the wayside, but is equally as important to consider and take the time to think about. It's as simple as considering, is your purpose to argue, persuade, inquire, propose, request, explain, announce, follow up, thank? Considering this already starts to focus your writing and is very important because a simple word or a simple purpose will help to give direction to your writing. Hopefully, it won't leave your audience thinking, so what? Once you have started to determine your purpose, think more about the following. What information needs to be communicated? What important questions need to be answered? And also, what vocabulary and verbs can I use to get my point across? Let's practice this by combining both our purpose and audience. How would you write a request to your boss to reschedule a meeting? Say, for example, you needed that meeting rescheduled so you had more time to prepare materials that you wanted to provide your boss, or more time to practice a presentation that was given to not only your boss but other superiors. How would you get this information across? First, what information needs to be communicated is the first thing we should consider. I would think you would first of all need to communicate that you want the meeting to be rescheduled for a specific reason. Now, if you were that audience member, meaning if you were your boss reading this letter or email, they would want to know, why does it need to be rescheduled, and how about when and where? So these are three important questions that you need to make sure you are getting across immediately in your email. And finally, what vocabulary and verbs can I use to get my point across? Well, you can use words similar to your purpose. If your purpose is to request, you can also use that as a verb and say, I would like to request a reschedule to the meeting. Words that are appropriate to your specific purpose. Next, think about how would you write to inquire about an ad to an external marketing manager. A lot of these things will be situational. For example, if you were to ask about the ad, what about it are you inquiring about? Which specific ad are we talking about? Now, if this is an external marketing manager, you might need to spend some time talking about who you are and what your company is and why you're asking about this. Seeing this kind of the bare bones structure, inquire about an ad to an external marketing manager helps you to kind of brainstorm the types of things that will need to go into that email, letter, report, etc. Finally, we need to consider clarity. So, are you being clear and concise in your writing? Oftentimes, we will save this to the end and use this to evaluate or edit our writing. Now, I know there's a lot of things that need to be considered in order to be clear and concise, so hopefully I can break it down a little bit more for you so you know the type of checkpoints or the checklist you need to look at when you're starting to edit your writing. First, when practicing clear and concise writing, it is important to get to the point immediately. State your purpose, which is what we just discussed, how to distinguish, and then immediately address the supporting detail. Your supporting detail will be the 5 W's: who, what, where, when, why, and also how. All of these will be required for your writing. A good check for this is once you have your writing, go through, even with the highlighter or mental check, and see if you've addressed all those questions. If you have a lot of extra detail, you most likely will not need that, and it can be removed. You need only the questions and details that will be relevant to your specific audience member. Once you have your purpose stated with your supporting detail, you will end with your call to action. Your call to action can be as simple as who is expected to do what by when. So let me repeat that. You will start with your purpose. Your first sentence will be exactly the reason why you are writing to that audience member. You will then go into your supporting detail, answering who, what, where, when, why, and how. And any other detail can be eliminated. And finally, you will end with a call to action, something along the lines of who is expected to do what by when. Now, visually, this should be all digestible information. What I mean by that is someone who takes a look at this email or letter can see that, one, it is easy to read, and they will be able to refer to a specific point in that writing without getting lost. I have an example on the following slide. The first example I have is an email that is pretty long. You can tell it's a block or one paragraph of a lot of information, ending with a couple lines with their name. This is not an example of good digestible information. If I want to find where page 8 is, I'm going to have to scour through sentences and sentences till I finally find it 4 sentences later. An example of an email that is digestible and that your audience member can read with ease is this one. As you can see, we broke up the block paragraph, so it has more space, it has bullet points, so I can find on bullet 2, page 8 is what I need to pay close attention to. Not only that, all 3 of those page callouts are bolded, so my eye goes directly to them, and it's just more aesthetically pleasing and much more easy to read and digest. You have to consider a lot of times that the person you are writing to, your audience member, may not have a lot of time. As you're busy, so is this audience member. If they can't understand what you are writing right away and understand the purpose, chances are it will get lost in their inbox or lost in a stack of papers on their desk and never seen again. Now, let's practice how to write clear and concise. Once you know generally the structure of your business writing in order to write clear and concise, you should then take a look at your individual sentences and see, is each sentence saying in a clear and concise way exactly what I want it. In order to evaluate that, there are a few checks you can look at that involve grammar, mechanics, punctuation, that will help you to distinguish when you are not writing too clear or concise. An example first is learning how to avoid adjectives and adverbs. I anxiously await your decision. This first sentence has an adverb that we may not need. I await your decision is very direct and easy to say. You can also change it to something simpler. I look forward to your decision. The second sentence, I would like to suggest a slight revision to your proposal. As you notice, that is a long sentence, kind of breathy and hard to speak out. I know what it is saying, but I know it can be said in a lot simpler of terms if we get rid of an adjective and then break it down a little bit into simpler terms. Here is a revision to your proposal. Next, use active and power verbs when you are writing to your audience member. This first example is passive voice. The proper process is to be executed when editing manuscript. Keep in mind, passive voice often uses the verbs to be, and usually it is an inanimate object doing an action. The proper process is a thing, but is not someone who can do an action. And as you notice, we also have is to be as our verb of this sentence. Let's change it to active voice, something along the lines of use the proper process when editing a manuscript, which is a request for someone to do that rather than the process to be doing something or doing the action within a sentence. The second sentence, I got their attention with our new advertisement. Now, there's nothing horribly wrong with this sentence. It's clear, direct, and arguably to the point. However, verbs like got, have, take are weak and oftentimes considered lazy, as there can be a verb that better describes the purpose of that sentence. Instead of I got their attention with our new advertisement, let's try I captivated their attention with our new advertisement. See how that now becomes a power verb, something that has a positive connotation, something that's a little bit more uplifting, exciting, inspiring, better than got. Next, avoid generalities. The first sentence, the conference took place in our training room. It was well prepared. Now, nothing wrong with this. Oftentimes we will not see there's an error in this example, except what does it stand for? We have our second sentence in this example, it was well prepared. Is it referring to the conference that was well prepared or our training room that was well prepared for the conference? To avoid this type of confusion over making general statements, let's try the conference took place in our training room and was well prepared. Now we have no confusion as to what was well prepared. It was the conference. The second example, it was a good presentation with a very good speaker. Now good is also similar to our weak verbs. It's also a weak adjective. It also can be very general. What is good? Good can often mean a good or a positive thing, or good can also be similar to fair, which means it was average but not horrible. So, to avoid something like this, an example for revision is the presentation was informative and led by an engaging speaker. Now, avoid jargon and cliches. Jargon is something, for any of those who are unaware, is the type of language or rhetoric we use within a company. It's phrases, words that a company may understand the meaning behind, but outside companies may not. And cliches are just general phrases that we use rather than thinking a little bit more about what we're trying to say. An example, we'll connect later regarding the interview. Connect. Kind of general, also borderline cliche, but it also does not tell us how we are going to connect. Are we going to connect via phone, face-to-face, in a meeting? We can clear up that confusion by being concise and clear and stating we will schedule a meeting to discuss the interview. Second example, you are pushing the envelope with that client. That is a pretty common cliche that we hear around the office. Pushing the envelope sometimes, though, can mean different things. Does that mean we commend you for taking the initiative and going above and beyond what you would with the client, or is it saying you are taking a risk with that client? To avoid that confusion, we say you are taking a large risk by signing that client. Make sure to be specific with what you are talking about. Finally, make sure to keep your supervisor in the loop. In the loop is a cliche that we want to avoid using as well. Instead, say, make sure to keep your supervisor updated on your progress. See how that gives much more specific information about your plan of action. Next, take a look at your writing and look at common grammar mistakes that might exist in your writing. The first one being me versus myself. Me versus myself is oftentimes hard to catch because we may not know how to best use myself. I think a lot of the time in business writing, we think myself sounds a little bit more professional and formal, so we put it in a sentence even when it should be me. This example, the document needs to be signed by both Jeff and me. The correct answer is me. Me always serves as the object of your sentence. Myself can be used if someone is already doing something at the beginning of the sentence, our subject is acting, and there is no object. An example of this is, I signed the document myself. As you notice, there is no object needed following our verb. We already have our subject who's doing the action, and that's why myself can be used at the end. When we are talking about people or things that are doing actions or being acted upon at the end of a sentence, that is when we need me. Similar to this example, the document needs to be signed by Jeff and me, two people. Myself can never be used instead of a person or their name. Affect versus effect. Affect is a verb. We use it as a verb in the sentence. Effect is when we use that as an adjective or a noun. It is important to understand the difference between effect and affect. Effect is often used as a noun. The effect of global warming is catastrophic. The effect in this sentence is a noun. Affect is your verb. Global warming was affected by human causes. Affect is your verb. So as you can tell in this example, we need a verb. The entire corporation was affected by their most recent layoff. Finally, another common grammar mistake is the apostrophe S versus S apostrophe. When we do S apostrophe, that means we're referring to more than one person. When it is apostrophe S, it means we're referring to one individual. Depending on whether you are talking about your boss or bosses, this sentence might go a little bit differently. But if we're talking about one individual boss, it was developed at my boss apostrophe S's suggestion. Okay, so we've reached the end of the workshop, and in hopes to apply everything you've learned, we have provided you with an example of an email. This was written by a student hoping to schedule an appointment with an advisor at a four-year university. The student wants to know more about who they can get in contact with to discuss this career change, if they would be suited for a specific program, and how to go about that. First, consider, is the student addressing his or her particular audience? Is his or her purpose clearly stated? Do we know what the student wants from this email? And third, is it written in a clear and concise way that we know what the student wants? The next email provided is a revised email. Keep in mind there is no one correct way to write an email, and there's many different preferences and styles that go into how we write. But for the purpose of providing an example, this is the one we suggest. As you can see, we have changed Dear College Admissions to stating a specific college. The first sentence, the student states the specific college they want to transfer to rather than just saying, I would like to go to any four-year university. The next few sentences of the paragraph, the student tries to make their request more concise, clear, and to the point by also addressing any questions that the admissions may have. First of all, when are they going to be on campus? Why are they going to be on campus? And what they want to do. As you can tell, those are addressed now more clearly. The second paragraph, the student gives a little bit more information and insight into them to give the admissions more information on how they can best help the student. The student wants to go into their business and marketing program and learn more about that and how it will help them become a data analyst. Giving specifics like this now gives the admissions more information on how or who they can reach out to for the student. And then the student continues to end the email more concise. Instead of saying, I anxiously await your response, we state, I look forward to. Instead of a more casual thanks, they add thank you. And rather than just stating their first name, they state their first and last name. Thank you for taking the time to watch this workshop on effective business writing. I hope it helped you to think more about what needs to be done when you start to write professionally. There's a lot of things to consider, but with this, hopefully we gave you a checklist of the best things to first think about and to evaluate when you have that writing completed. If you have any questions or would like to see this workshop in person, you can come to the Writing, Reading, Speech Assistance in the Learning Commons. We are also available to help you with one-on-one appointments for 45-minute durations and any writing, reading, speech needs. And online appointments are available to you as well. And if you would like to access more information about the Writing, Reading, Speech Assistance, you can go to our College of DuPage website listed under Academics in the Learning Commons tab. Thank you for watching the workshop, and we hope you learned a thing or two about how to write effectively. Thank you.